Hello and welcome to busyworksbeats.com. I'm making this video because I understand you may be frustrated watching other YouTube videos, but in this video, I'm going to show you how to learn music theory from scratch. Even if you know nothing about music theory, keys, scales, the key of C, where C is on the keyboard, this video will be for you. So what you can expect is I'm going to show you guys how to literally go from knowing nothing about music theory to learning how to create your first chord progression. I'm going to teach you how to create melodies the easy way, and I'll show you guys how to think about music in a 4-layer process. Okay, so it's really simple, but firstly, before we get into the DAW of FL Studio, let's talk about the piano for a second. I'm going to close my eyes and show you guys some magic here. We're going to close my eyes, pick a random note. It doesn't even matter if you know this note. In this case, we played D flat. So to follow along. So what we can do to create chords, there are things called chord codes. This is based on what's called integer notation, but I call it chord codes just because it's just how I learn stuff. Okay, so I stumbled across this because in college I learned traditional sheet music, and in sheet music you learn by the staff. But the issue was I was trying to translate the staff into the DAW and it never translated. I was always putting the first, the third, and the fifth in the DAW, and it wasn't working out correctly because we produce in a whole different way. We produce horizontally in the DAW. So let me show you how to create your first chord. Pick any note on your keyboard, and this will be what's called the root note or 0. We say 0 because it's a point of rest and there's no distance, okay? Let's count up our keyboard. So in this case, we have a chord code chart at busyworksbeats.com/music theory, but it guides you through the different chord types. So chords have DNA. So this minor chord is 0, 3, 7. So wherever you are is 0. Let's count up the keyboard note by note. So 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 0, 3 creates the minor third, it's called. Let's keep counting. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's called the perfect fifth. Now what happens if we play all those notes together? 0, 3, and 7. And I'm using semitones because it's the absolute value for a note. Whereas when you speak about scale degrees, which are different, you need a scale in order to create chords, which creates a block. So here we have the minor chord. 0, 3, 7. Let's pick another random key. I'm closing my eyes as you guys can see. And I landed on D, for example. This is our 0 point. We're going to count up the keyboard note by note until we finish out the chord code, which is 0, 3, 7. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. That's called a minor third. And then 4, 5, 6, 7. Play all those notes together. You get a D minor all of the time, every single time. Now I'm going to go a little more advanced because this is in the chord code chart that you guys could use at busyworksbeats.com/music theory. Let's create what's called a minor ninth chord. This is a really advanced chord that sounds very jazzy. So I'm going to close my eyes one more time. Pick a random note. We landed on the same note. Let's do a different note. Okay, I landed on B. Okay, so the chord code, I'll speed this up a little bit so that we can get into the DAW of FL Studio. But this is the fastest way to get into music theory is chord codes. And again, you'll get the chord code chart for free when you sign up at busyworksbeats.com/music theory. I'll be sure to leave that link in the description. Here we have what's called B. Okay, this is 0. We're going to count up our keyboard note by note. So 0, 1, 2, 3. It's our minor third. 4, 5, 6, 7. That's our minor triad. So 0, 3, 7, 10, 14 is our minor ninth chord. So we have 0, 3, 7 so far. 8, 9, 10. It's a minor seventh. 11, 12, 13, 14. Play all those notes together. You have your minor ninth chord. Now you can do cool stuff like this once I show you the other chord types. Okay, you can do cool stuff like this. Is find what's called the dominant chord, which starts 7 notes from your root note. So this is your root note. Count up 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's called the perfect fifth. And you can create what's called a dominant ninth chord from here. So I am being very advanced in this next thing, so don't try to copy this. So we just did a tonic chord to the dominant chord back to the tonic. That R&B, 90s R&B vibe. Once I teach you guys that chord, that dominant ninth chord, that's all you really need to sound saucy for R&B. All right, so now that we went over all the magic, let's hop straight into FL Studio. Let's get straight to it. So firstly, let's start from scratch as if you knew nothing about anything. Again, this tutorial is a more laid back tutorial. This is not like meant to be a course. It's just to show you guys how powerful music theory is so we can stop demonizing it and making it like something that's super hard and complex. I think it's just taught by people who make it complex. So firstly, let's go to where it says the channel rack here. And we're going to load up a plugin called Flex. So Flex has basically multiple types of sounds, from organic sounds to synthetic sounds. What you want to do is go to the Store tab, download what's called the Essential Pianos. Okay, it should have a little download marker right next to it. And once you have that downloaded, go to your library tab, go to Essential Pianos, and then go to where it says Yamaha C7. If you're in another DAW, you just want to follow along with a grand piano, because grand piano is your most common sound. And you can do pretty much every octave in your piano that sounds natural. Whereas if I did this with a flute doesn't sound natural down here. You know, so that's why grand pianos used most of the time. Okay, so now we're going to go into a DAW. And again, I'll map this out clearly. The main issue with the DAW is that we produce sideways. We don't produce the same way we would do on a keyboard. So the main way people teach you keyboard, just to be really quick, they teach you shapes. And that's great for somebody who's looking at a keyboard straight on. In a DAW, if I right click and open up what's called the piano roll is sideways. So I can't use shapes sideways. It does not work that way. And that's why I teach chord codes, because it applies to us as producers. So what I'm going to do is show you guys the chord codes one more time in the DAW, show you how easy it is. So literally I could just close my eyes, pick a note. Okay, so this is E flat. You don't even need to know what that note is. Let's say you want to create a dark vibe. Okay, dark usually associates to what's called a minor chord type. So let's create that minor chord type. The minor chord code was 037. 0 is your root note. Again, we're not talking about scale degrees. We're talking about semitone values in integer notation. So this is 0. Now we're going to count up our keyboard note by note. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Add that note in. 4, 5, 6, 7. Add that note. You now have a minor chord. Now, how do I make this darker? What I could do is grab this bottom note here. It's called the root note. Let's hit Control to highlight, hit Shift, left click and drag, hit Control down in FL Studio. And I can add what's called an octave. Octaves are basically the same note, but just played in a different register. So it's a different frequency. Okay, so you have bass frequencies, you have middle frequencies, and you have super high frequencies. So basically we can thicken out a sound by adding bass frequencies of the same exact root note. So let's take this root note one more time, hit Shift, copy it, hit Control down. Now we're going to get a really dark sound. Even if I do what's called transpose this entire chord down an octave, let's hit Control down. Now you get that dark, gritty. Okay, so that's how you get a dark vibe. It's not only the chord type, it's also the octave in which you play it. So let's play another chord type, which is very dark. Let's play what's called a suspended second chord. The chord code for this is 027. So if a minor chord code is 037, that always makes a minor chord no matter where I am. A suspended chord is 027, a suspended second chord. So let's take this note, 0, we already have that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's basically the same exact thing, except that middle note is dropped down 1. So that's called a suspended second chord. Listen to how dark this sounds. Oh, that's my mouse clicking. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. And it sounds like the same chord, but it's something different about it to where the ear can detect it. But it feels like a minor chord. And it's such a subtle difference. So that's why we use it a lot. Now there's another chord called a suspended fourth chord. Now we'll get into what all this means, fourth and fifth and all this, but a fourth is 5 semitones up from a root note. So if we take this root note and then count at 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's move this note to there. And then we're going to keep our perfect fifth, which is 7 notes from the root note. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have the fourth, which is 5 notes away upward from the root note, and then we have the perfect fifth, which is 7 notes up from the root note. And this creates what's called a suspended fourth chord. So it's a little more melodic when paired with the suspended second chord. Okay, so what I'll do to really demonstrate this is make this go a little bit faster. We can even pull this section up 1 octave, Control up. Let's try it even higher. there you have the dark vibe in what, 3 chords? You really don't need to know a bunch of chords to create a dark vibe, which is pretty much all of modern trap is pretty dark sounding. So to get the dark vibe, you don't need to really apply any more than those chord types. You really just need to understand that to create tension in the music to where it feels like it's pulling you, you want to try those suspended chords because that will create a change so that the ear doesn't get so fatigued. I could do this all day, but my ear wants some kind of change. So what happens? We're going to flatten that third. So I can do this for 3 bars. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, change, 2, 3, 4. See how our ear kind of wants that change at the end? Now, speaking of timing, funny enough, what I'll do is I'll teach you guys how to count the metronome quickly. The short way to understand this is every time the metronome hits, that's 1 beat, like a heartbeat. Okay, so if you're like a house DJ, for example, you want the heartbeat that matches your audience at a very like high intensity. So you might target 128 BPM because it gets people like they're in there, almost like they're running on a treadmill. Okay, so this is, you want to make sure people can jump to it. Okay, so there's tempo to it. This is called the tempo or the BPM. So every time that that metronome hits, that's considered 1 beat. Okay, so let's count out the beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so there's 16 beats, but we can keep counting all the way up to infinity, but that doesn't help us arrange music. So what we do is we simplify counting all those numbers into smaller chunks. Think of it like when you guys are working out. You know, if you start counting 1 to 100, your brain knows you're about to reach 100 and it starts, you're like 99 and it takes forever to get to that last 100. So a simple way to do a workout is like break it into chunks. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you count again, 2, 2, 3, 4. It just makes the brain feel like you're doing less. So the same thing with music, we want to make it feel like it's compiled. So what we do is we usually count to 4. And that's for many different reasons, but basically the way a time signature is mapped, and I don't want to get too geeky too fast, but anytime you hear somebody say 4/4 time, it means we're counting to 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. We count it to 4 times. So that top number, like 6, for example, 6/8, that means we count to 6 8 times, but that's for more advanced stuff. I don't want to bog you down with numbers and math. The main thing is we count to 4 for the most part. In most music, you're counting to 4. So anytime I want to like wrap something up, it usually has to be on that 4th thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, change 2, 3, 4, and that was on that 4th thing. Okay, so that's like a quick rule of thumb is that the ear wants change at the end of something to know that we're moving into something else. Now that we understand that, let's talk about scales. So what are scales? Scales are sequences of notes that somebody likes. That's the real simple definition for a scale because you can get into what is a mode. A mode is also a scale. Okay, so even though we're using a different name, it's the same concept. It's a sequence of notes somebody likes. That's pretty much what a scale is. Now, when I say what is a key, you may be confusing the word key with scale, and I used to too. So what is that? What's the difference first before we get into how to map these out? So if I start here at C, and I use all of the white notes starting from C, this is our major scale. Okay, so we're building out a sequence of notes that sounds good to somebody, and it starts at C. So let's map out that sequence. So we measure differently than chord codes when we speak about scales because scales are just based on shape. And again, when you try to understand shape sideways, it's not the same thing as understanding shape looking straight onto a keyboard. It's a different thing. So what we have to use here are called whole steps. Now, what is a whole step before I continue? A whole step is 2 notes. So it's really the same number system. It's just simplified into something more symbolic called whole steps and half steps. So a whole step means when I go from 1 note to 2 notes away. So this would be either C down to 1, 2 to B flat, or a whole step would be C up 2 notes, 1, 2 to D. Okay, so a whole step is anytime you move up or down 2 notes. Now a half step is when you go up or down 1 note. And that's important for like bluesy stuff. So let me show you guys a chord that sounds really fire. Let me pull up my program here. Okay, so let's say we want to create like an R&B vibe. Like here's a major 9th chord. What I'm going to do though is take this note and go down a half step. So now we're out of the key on purpose. Now we're not done changing the chord here. I also want to take what's called the 7th and pull it down to what's called the 6th. So I'm taking this E, going down a whole step, 2 notes. So it's 1, 2 to D. So we're going from this chord, and because we went down a half step and a whole step, you get this whole different vibe just from those small changes. You can do cool stuff like this. Okay, so half steps are what give you that bluesy, jazzy sound. So don't be afraid to use half steps and like go out of the key. One thing I should have learned earlier in music theory is to be okay with going outside of the scale, okay? Now, I didn't define what the difference between a key and a scale is. A key is the tonic note that starts off the sequence. Okay, the same way when you build a chord, the way I know what kind of chord is, like for example, let's make this chord real quick. Close my eyes, pick a note. We're here at A. Let's use that same chord code 037. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I may ask you guys, what chord type is this? Okay, let's count it out. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 037 is always a minor chord all the time. Now the way I define the chord is I say, okay, it's a minor chord type, but what's the root note of the chord? The root note is A. So I say the root note first, A, and then I say the chord type, minor. So it's A minor. Okay, so that's how we name chords. So the same thing with a key and the scale. A scale is the sequence of notes going up, whereas the key is the tonic note going across. So in this case, the tonic is the home key. Okay, so this would be C, the bottom note, C, and then it's a major scale. So we say this is a C major scale. The same way we did with A, it was an A minor chord. This is a C major scale. Now you don't need to memorize this. Again, when you get a real keyboard, it's more so about shapes than memorizing a type of scale, okay? And I'll show you guys why I'm saying that. So firstly, here is the C major scale. It's all the white notes starting from C. This is going to be your most common scale, but in production, I would say A minor is more common. We don't really use C major that much in hip hop. Okay, so mapping out the scale, again, it's a sequence of notes that sounds good. So in this case, somebody decided all the white notes starting from C sounds good to them. Now we measure the scale in what are called whole steps and half steps. A whole step is 2 notes away, up or down. A half step is 1 note away, up or down. And what we can do here is understand this sequence. So this is a whole step, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, and a whole step, and then it repeats back a half step. I have scale codes as well. If you go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory, I also map out all the different scales and the different W and H combos. So instead of memorizing stuff, again, I'm giving you guys the reality is when you actually get a MIDI controller, it's about shape more than it is about memorizing whole steps and half steps. Okay, but if you want to create this from scratch, it's the major scale code is whole step, half step, and then whole, half. And the quick way that I understand the difference between major and minor, just by quickly eyeballing it, is where the half step is. So if the half step is way up here, I know it's a major scale. And I'll show you guys when we get to a minor scale. Now here's the secret that we're about to delve deep into. So buckle up and smash that like button too. All right, so here's the secret. Every major scale has an equal and opposite minor scale. Okay, so every major scale has another minor scale. Okay, so what we're gonna do is go to C, and the secret is if you're in a major scale, again, you know this by the whole step, half step ratio. So this is the root note C, it's whole step, half step, which lets me know it's a major, and then whole step, half step. Now to get to what's called the relative minor scale, we're gonna take the root note of the major scale. Now, this is a little bit arbitrary, but I'm going to teach you guys a secret. not really arbitrary. Maybe the word is ubiquitous, I should say, instead of arbitrary. But the major scales associated with happiness, that's not always the case. But for this explanation, we're going to say that major is happy, meaning like upward means happy. Okay. When you feel up, you feel happy. When you feel down, you feel sad. So when we're in the major scale, okay, what we can do is count down 3 semitones or down 3 notes to get to the relative minor scale. Okay, into sadness. We're going down to sadness from a major scale. So let's count down 3. 1, 2, 3. That root note is what? A. What we do from here to find the relative minor scales, we use the same exact notes we used in C major, but we just start from the new position in this case, which is A. So it's all the white notes starting from A, and that creates what's called the A natural minor scale. Okay, going from A to A gives you a different sequence of notes. Okay, so this is a whole step, a half step this time, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Now, do I think about music in that way, whole steps and half steps as a music producer? No. So as a beginner, I would not force yourself to memorize this. Again, when you're on the keyboard, you go by shape more than you go by how many whole steps and half steps. Okay, so I just want to give you guys a reality and not make you waste a bunch of time. So the cool part is that I can go from a C major to an A natural minor scale using what's called a 2-5-1. This is very advanced, but I'll show you guys what it sounds like. So for example, this is the C major scale. I could do what's called a 2-5-1 in C major, which is D minor. I'll use what's called a substitution here. Okay, so that's a jazzy way to do it. And now let's do a 2-5-1, but in A natural minor. Okay, so I use the same exact notes for the most part, but it feels like a whole different thing. I'll play it slower this time. That's the vibe. Okay, so the secret is not going into these really exotic scales that sound weird. The secret is, how do I take the major scale into sounding like the minor scale? That's the real secret sauce. Okay, and I teach that in my busyworksbeats.com/music theory essentials course. Okay, and you'll learn in the other course too called music theory magic. Because in music theory magic, I cover really advanced stuff like secondary dominant chords, going outside the key on purpose, 2-5-1, really advanced voicing, it's called, like how to take a minor chord from sounding like this, which is kind of bland and basic. Show you guys how to voice your chords like this. Now there's a more R&B sound to it. Okay, that's called chord voicing. Okay, so we get deeper, in the course material. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory essentials. I recommend you guys start with music theory in a day first, build your foundation, then move into music theory magic when you guys are ready. Okay, everybody wants to skip to melodies, but you guys have to understand harmony first, which is chords. Okay, so now that you guys understand there's a major scale and there's a minor scale, now I'll play these scales just to let you guys hear it. So major is associated with happiness, whereas minor is associated with darkness. Okay, so it's just the same amount of notes, same exact notes starting from different points. Okay, it gives you 2 different vibes. You don't need to memorize those. Trust me, guys, you don't need to memorize these. Okay, now let's get into like real life application. How do you use all this information? So firstly, let's say I want to make a dark melody. Now we're going to start getting into use case here. So what is dark? Dark is a minor chord, and it's a minor chord and a suspended second chord. So if I wanted to create like a Travis Scott vibe, I'd start at either E or F. All of Utopia, I studied it, and it was in the key of E and F for the most part, minor, E minor and F minor, because E targets a depression type of feel and F targets more of a rebellious type of feel. Okay, so let's start here at E. And E and F are what's called a half step away, so that's why these work so well. You can, seamlessly go from E to F. So the first chord we're going to use here is a minor chord, and you guys will get the project files. So if you go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory, you guys will get these project files for free. So we have 0 here. Remember, our minor chord is 0, 3, 7. So 0, we're going to count up the keyboard, 0, 1, 2, 3. And I meant to go back to scale degrees and talk about the name. So I will do that in a second, but I completely forgot. So 0, 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7. You're like, this sounds cool, but it's not dark enough. So how do we make it darker? We're going to take this root note, duplicate it, hit shift, left click and drag, hit control down in FL Studio. Still not dark. So let's take this bottom note again, the same exact root note, hit control down again. Still not as dark as I want it. So now we're going to pull everything down an octave. Let's hit control down. And now it has that density that I need. Okay, but I can't just play the same chord over and over and over again. That will get boring. So let's highlight this, hit control, highlight this, hit shift, left click, and drag it over. What we'll do now is create what's called the suspended second chord. So the suspended second chord, we're going to take this and hit shift down. Basically, the chord code is 0, 2, 7. Instead of 0, 3, 7, it's 0, 2, 7. And I need to also teach you guys the difference between a major and a minor. Okay, so I'll do that next. Is scale degrees and the difference between a major and a minor chord. Then we have those two chords back to back. Let's copy these again. My finger, it keeps slipping, so sorry. Let's do this again. Okay, so let's say you want to make a melody out of this. I'm going to show you guys how to break harmony into melody. Let's copy the same exact chord, hit control up twice. So now we have this high frequency area. Now what we can do is split up the timing of the chord into multiple notes. So I'll make this simple. We're going to play these 3 notes from the chord, but we're going to play them going up the chord. So it's going to be E, G, and then B. And then we're just going to repeat. And then we could just go back down. So it's up, down. Okay, and then we're going to repeat this. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, and I'm going to have to make this easier for me. So we're going to do the same exact thing, but this time we're going to take what's called that minor third and hit shift down to pull it down to that half step, which makes this a suspended second chord. My finger keeps slipping, so let's copy this again. See how it adds that tension for the ear to latch on, and then it pulls back. Now all you need is some drums. Now let me show you guys how to humanize piano just a little bit. This is a little more advanced and not really about music theory. But in FL Studio, you want to download what's called a piano roll script from the forums called Remove Overlaps. That will help this tremendously. Basically, we need to elongate the notes until they all overlap. And let's say you're too lazy to download the piano roll script called Remove Overlaps. Okay, but I'll show you guys what it does. So see how all these notes are overlapping? Sometimes when you overlap notes, FL Studio just doesn't play the notes. And also too, at the end here, the notes just kind of drag off and it just keeps playing. So we want to make sure that we grab a slice tool, it's called, hit shift, left click, and then make sure nothing goes over that bar. Hit control to highlight, hit control X or delete to get rid of those notes. Okay, so what I recommend for good practice is not to overlap notes. And I'll show you guys 2 different ways to do it. Again, this is more FL Studio based, but hang in there with me, folks who use Ableton or Logic or anything else. We're going to click the tool here. Let's go to Remove Overlaps. And again, you download this from the Image Line forums in the Piano Roll Scripts section. So I know that's a mouthful. If I remember, I'll link it below. I'm probably going to forget. I'll leave a note so that I don't forget. Piano Roll Script link. Okay, so hopefully I remember that. Now, I'll show you guys another way in the case that you don't have that or you're too lazy to download it for whatever reason. Okay, so we're going to highlight this area here. And let's say we want to make sure that none of these notes overlap. We're going to hit Alt plus L on our keyboard and then hit what's called only with selection. So that basically what it does is it looks at all of this note B and it looks for any overlappage and it gets rid of it. So that's what you could do per note. So you could hit Control on your key. So it highlights all the notes, hit Alt plus L. Make sure this only with selections turned on. Oops. So it's a little tedious to do it one by one, but that's how we used to have to do it before that piano roll shortcut. Okay, so now we can go back. So now it feels more realistic, whereas before, if I played it before, here's what it sounds like when you don't add that. It just feels very stiff. It doesn't feel live at all. Okay, so the next thing I would do to humanize your chords and melodies is, and notice we did chords, okay, we did bass line, we did what's called a top line melody, and we did what's called rhythm. Those are the 4 layers of composition. You have a top line, which is your memorable melody. So in this case, that do, 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 that's memorable. And because we're playing a chord chopped up into rhythm, that's 2 sections here. So let me show you guys quickly how I arrange songs. The first layer is called the top line. This is your memorable melody. The next layer is called your harmony. That's our chord types, like a minor chord, major chord, any chord you could think of. Then we have what's called a contrast layer. This is where we add the bass line or where we add a counter melody to counteract the rest of the song. And lastly, we have what's called rhythm. Now the rhythm can be your drums. It could be a rhythmic percussion. It could be a rhythmic synth. It could be a rhythmic way that you play your instruments. So rhythm is not always drums. So basically what I showed you guys is how to create all 4 of these layers using one instrument. We have every single layer in here. We have the top line. We have the rhythm layer embedded in the top line in an arpeggio style, it's called. We have the chords in the middle for the glue of the track. And then we have the bass at the bottom, the contrast layer for the density. So we have everything we need to be a full composition. That's why the piano is so strong as a main instrument. So nextly, we can go to where it says tools, and I'm just showing FL Studio folks this. There's a humanize tool. So let me show you guys why this sounds robotic. If you grab the ellipses at the bottom here, everything is the same, what's called velocity. Velocity is how fast you hit the notes on your keyboard. Okay, so if you're playing with a real keyboard, you could play soft. You play really soft. Or you can play super hard. Okay, and that difference is what creates energy in a track. If you play soft, it's very intimate, sentimental. So let's play the chord progression I played. Let's play soft and then like more aggressive. And this feel more jazzy because we're playing it softer. You know what happens if I slam the keys? Feels very like anthemic and it pulls up the energy, okay, because we have what are called more harmonics, usually speaking, when we play something harder, like a guitar string. If you slam the guitar string, it's like bang, 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 bang. But if you just hit it just a little bit, it's very soft. So that's what happens with stringed instruments. Long story short, the velocity is what determines that human feel. So if everything is the same feel, it's not going to feel realistic. So there's an old way and a new way. The old way is if you are in FL Studio, you can hit Alt R, okay, and then turn off what's called pattern mode for the randomizer. Go to where it says levels and then mess with the level velocity. So now basically the velocities are randomized. This is the old way of doing it though, because it's random. There's no like human thought. If you go to where it says tools and then humanize, this is built to be more human because now it doesn't only just adjust the velocity, it adjusts the timing of the notes. If you don't want that, you could always mess with the start time and pull that back to 0. But you can mess with the velocity, the duration of the note, and the starting time, which is what creates human. Like if I play this kind of, you know, I'm playing at different speeds. So that's what gives it that human vibe, is that I'm playing not perfectly to the grid like this, which sounds like a robot in most cases. So I've added the humanize. Now, one thing is, this might be still too loud. So I know I'm showing you guys a lot of FL Studio sauce here, but we're going to grab that slice tool, hit Shift, right click. We want to make sure we right click to create that red slice. And basically anything over the bar, it will delete. Okay. So very important once you add this, because sometimes the notes go over the bar. Now, nextly, let's say this piano is too aggressive. It might feel more human, but it's too aggressive. We can hit what's called Alt X on our keyboard and change what's called the multiply. So now lower velocities usually trigger what's called a softer articulation. It depends on the plugin. This is not a universal thing. It's just sometimes it makes it softer. Sometimes it makes it just lower in volume. Okay, so let's lower that volume. Now we still have some overlapping notes like right here. So I'm going to go back and use that remove overlaps script to get rid of that overlappage. So sometimes you don't need to add more chords. What I'm trying to show you guys is you can actually play the same exact thing, but just at a different velocity. So what I'll do here is I'll copy this. We'll hit Control B to latch paste so that it's basically just duplicated. Now on this part, what we're going to do is play it a little bit louder. Okay, so make sure on my note. Okay, I knew we're missing some notes here. Let's hit Alt X again, and I'm just going to visually look at the velocity and put it somewhere in the middle. And let's hit Control B again, hit Alt X. I'm going to up the velocity a little bit more, and then Control B again, Alt X, and then have the velocity all the way at the top, just to really make a dramatic difference. So let's listen to the energy difference. We're not changing the instrument at all, or the notes, we're just changing how hard we play the instrument. It will give us a different vibe. Okay, so we can feel there's more energy behind that piano now. Now we're about to get to level 3. Here we go. And now the piano is just screaming at us, basically. That one, hopefully it didn't blow your speakers. I hope nobody's speakers is turned all the way up for that one. So you gotta be really careful with that high velocity, unless you do what's called, what do you call it? Gain staging here. Okay, so hopefully nobody's speakers blow out just then. I might edit this just in post just to make sure. Okay, so I'm gonna clap so I remind myself where it's at. Hopefully I didn't wake my son up just now. Okay, so we're on a new section here. And what I'll do is make a note real quick. Now let's go back to scales. So I don't want to focus so heavily on scales again, because I don't think in a scale. I think more so about my intent first, and then I figure out the scale later. So scale is not a starting point for me. It's more of a, hey, oh, I'm in the minor scale. That's why I need to change something. So it's not always a starting point. I want to make that very clear. So firstly, I didn't really go over the scale degrees and the difference between a major and a minor chord. So firstly, we need to understand that. Let's start here with a major chord. How do you make a major chord? Instead of 0-3-7 like a minor chord, major is 0-4-7. So the middle note is different. So once you understand chord codes, it's the DNA of a chord. It makes so much more sense. So here we can start at G. Let's count up our keyboard to make a major chord. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 4, 7 always gives us a major chord type. Now, how do we make a minor chord? It's 0-3-7. So 0 is our root note in this case. And then we count up our keyboard note by note until we finish out that chord code. So again, you guys will get a free chord code chart at busyworksbeats.com/music theory. So to create the minor, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, again, most people associate major with happiness. That's not always the case, but it's a way to simplify it to where you can understand it quickly, the difference between a major and a minor. So that is the main difference is this middle note. Instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 0, 1, 2, 3. That's the only difference between a major triad, it's called. A 3-note chord is called a triad, tri meaning 3. Okay, so the only difference between a major and a minor triad is that note in between. The same way the difference between a minor chord and a suspended second chord is that same middle note. It's just different. Okay, so it's just the middle note changing basically through all these chord types. Now that you guys kind of comprehend major and minor, let me take it a little bit far so you can understand the real sound of a major. Not just like simple triads. So let's do what's called a major ninth chord. You don't need to memorize this teaching here. Okay, so this is a major ninth. And let's do what's called a 2-5-1. I'll just put you guys on game real quick. Now, when I say 2-5-1, what am I speaking to? I'm referring to scale degrees. Technically, when I say 2-5-1, it's in a Roman numeral sequence. And really, it should be called second, fifth, first. But people get lazy and they say 2-5-1. Not to be confused with chord codes. Chord codes are based on what are called semitones. Anytime you go from one note to the next, that's one semitone. If I go to my tuning, for example, and I change my range to 1, you have what are called cents, like a dollar. Think of a semitone like a dollar because it's shaped like an S, like the US dollar with the little thing in it. So semitone is like a dollar, whereas cents are like cents in real life that we have. So when I'm tuning an instrument, which we'll get into with the tuning portion, which I need to add to this conversation, is the tuning. Because you may think you're out of key or out of the scale, but you just didn't tune your instrument. Okay. Anyhow, what we can do is there's 100 cents between each semitone. Okay. So if I go here and then I go up 100 cents, I'm at the next key. But what about the in-between cents? Am I at the next key? Am I still at the old key? Where am I at? Okay. So that's called tuning, and we'll get into that. But just understand that there's 100 cents per semitone. So every time I go from one note to the next, we're going up or down one semitone. And that would be important here because, again, when we speak about scale degrees, let's map out what's called the C major scale. C major scale is all the white notes starting from C. So it's C, D, E, F, G. Almost said H. Okay, back to A, B, and C. That's our C major scale. So when I talk about Roman numerals, second, fifth, first scale degree, it's called the 2-5-1 because people just say it fast that way, but it really means second, fifth, first. So what is the second, fifth, first? The second is the second note in the scale. So the first note in the scale is C. It's the tonic. It has a name to it, the tonic. The second scale degree is called the second because it's the second note in that sequence of notes that we think sounds good. In this case, from C to C, it's all the white notes. The third, in this case, we'll get into it, but the third is the third scale degree, okay? Because it's the third note in this specific scale. The fourth is the fourth scale degree, the fifth, sixth, seventh, and then back to the first, okay? Now, thirds can be major or minor, and I'll go into that maybe in the course at busyworksbeats.com/music theory essentials. I don't know if that will make this video because it's getting too much into the weeds of things. But you can have major third, you could have minor third, you could have a major seventh, you could have a minor seventh. So even though we are talking about one scale degree position, the seventh, there's two versions of it. So it gets a little convoluted. That's why I want to save that for the bigger course. So anyhow, we want to do what's called a 2-5-1 or a second, fifth, first chord progression. So we're going to create chords starting from this point. So we're going to go to the second note of the scale. That's our first chord. We're going to go to the fifth note of the scale. So that's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So that's G. And then we're going to go to the first, which is the C, which is our root note of the scale. Okay, so the cool thing about scales is that it helps you, and I say help because it's not a definitive guide, but it helps you understand what are called chord extensions. So if you wanted to make a simple chord, you would just start at D, skip every other note to create your chord. So it's D, skip E, go to F, skip G, go to A. That's called a triad or a three-note chord. But it's a very basic chord. It sounds super vanilla. Now we can go to G, skip A, go to B, skip C, go to D. That's a G major chord. How do I know? Because it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's called a major third, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 0, 4, 7 always creates the major chord. How do I know D is a minor chord? It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's a minor triad because it has a minor third and then it has that perfect fifth on top. That's the difference between a major and a minor chord. Lastly, we're going to land at C. We're going to skip D, go to E, skip F, go to G. That gives us our first triad. Okay, so a triad is a three-note chord. Chords are not necessarily three notes. If you look at the old definition, and I teach this in my Music Theory Essentials course and Music Theory Magic actually, but I looked at the old definition of a chord and it says two notes or more, which explains so much about modern music, like Playboi Carti chords, Yeat chords. They use music theory. They use chordal harmony and quintal harmony. So there is music theory even in Yeat and Playboi Carti stuff. Okay, so that's the boring triad way. Now I can make this more gospel-y by taking these notes and inverting them, that's called, by moving them out of their position, by hitting control down. This will make it sound more gospel. Okay, that's called the first inversion because we're taking the root note and we're technically pulling it up an octave, but we're just pulling this entire chord down an octave. So that's called an inverted chord because we're changing the way the notes are arranged. That's basically what it means. And it's called first inversion because we're taking the first note and we're pulling that up an octave. So how do I make these chords more advanced to sound more like an R&B song? So I will get a little advanced here, but it's for your benefit. So the first thing here is we need to use what's called a chord extension. The way you create chord extensions is you keep skipping every other note in the scale. So here at D, we skip E, go to F, skip G, go to A, skip B, go to C, skip D, go to E. This creates what's called a minor ninth chord, and I'll teach you guys why it's called a minor ninth. Okay, so let's pull this down an octave. Now the question is, why is this called a ninth, and what's a seventh, and what is a sixth chord? It's all based on what are called scale degrees. So if I start here at D, and let's say the scale just started at D, this would be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. So this is called a D, and the chord type is a minor, and we talk about what's called the chord extension, so it's a minor ninth. So that's where the name comes from. It actually comes from the scale degrees. So you don't need to memorize that necessarily, but you want to get familiar with minor ninth chords, major ninth chords. Now, how do we extend this chord at G? We, start at our root note G, skip A, go to B, skip C, go to D, skip E, go to F, skip G, go to A. So we have D, F, A. So this is also a ninth chord, but it's not a typical major or minor chord. And I'll teach you guys why. Okay, and lastly, we have here the major chord. So again, starting at C, skip D, go to E, skip F, go to G, skip A, go to B, skip C, go to D. The simple way to think about it is once I get to 5-note chords, chances are it's a ninth chord. When the chord is 5 notes or more, chances are. That's not a hard rule, just a rule of thumb type of thing. And when it has 4 notes, chances are it's a 7th chord, but that's not necessarily always the truth. Okay, so that's what it sounds like by default. Now I'm going to give you guys a really advanced sauce. I learned this from a jazz theory book, and it just changed my mind about everything in music theory. So this is called an altered chord. What we can do is the 5th and the 9th. Let me just give you the secrets right now. Okay. It's in the number 7. So if we start here at G and we count up 7 notes, we get what? The perfect 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The perfect 5th is always going to be harmonious with the tonic note. And it's always 7 notes away from the tonic note. So we call that the perfect 5th. Now the 9th is also 7 notes from the perfect 5th. So see how we repeat this theme? So if we count up 7 more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we get the 9th. Now what we can do is treat the perfect 5th and the 9th as, I call these tonal twins. It's not a technical term, but I created it because that's how I think about how they move. We're going to move these together. So if I move one, I'm going to move the other. Not a hard rule, but it's just something to think about. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move these up 1. So this is called an altered chord because now we're changing the way the chord is voiced into a different note. Okay, so we just went up a half step for the perfect 5th and the 9th. We went up a half step. This is called sharp 5, sharp 9. Anytime we go up a note, a half step, it's called a sharp. Anytime we go down a half step, if I were to take this perfect 5th and perfect 9th and go down, that's called flat. Anytime we go downward. If you go upward, sharp, downward, flatness. You guys will understand that more over time. So we're going to do what's called raise these and sharp. We're going to sharpen the 5 and the 9. So here's the sauce for R&B. Whole different vibe. Okay, now I'll show you guys some more sauce. This is bonus sauce. We could take this entire what's called a dominant 9th chord and we could pull it down 6 notes. This is called a tritone substitution. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it has more of a jazzy feel. So you're like, wait, what's a minor chord, a major chord? And you said dominant chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yes, this is a dominant chord. And a dominant chord always wants to come back to what's called the tonic. So to simplify dominant and tonic, think about it this way. The same way every major chord, let's say this again. The same way every major scale has a relative minor scale, meaning it's like one and the same. You have happiness and you have sadness, but they're both one and the same. So the same thing with tonic and dominant. It's like dominant will pull you this way, but the tonic is this way. Okay, so if you want that push-pull, let me show you guys some examples. Here's the tonic chord. Here's the dominant chord with that alteration. Tonic chord. See how it pulls you away? And then it resolves. So think of a tonic as like peace, and think of the dominant chord as like stressing you out, pulling you each way like a rubber band. You pull it, and then tonic is like when you release the rubber band and it snaps back. Okay. So really, if you truly want to advance very fast in music theory, just study dominant chords to tonic chords. I'll give you guys a quick cheat sheet. There's dominant chords, and there's also what's called secondary dominant chords, which I teach you guys all this stuff in Music Theory Magic. So just go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory essentials. That's the starting point. Once you learn music theory in a day, then you move to Music Theory Magic. Okay, so why is this called a dominant chord? It's because this is both a major chord and a minor chord. How do I know that? If we start here at G, let's count up. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a major triad, 0, 4, 7. Now I mentioned quickly, chord extensions. And if I look at our minor chord, for example, what makes this a minor seventh is that it has a minor seventh on top. It's called an interval. Intervals are just distances between notes. I don't want to give you guys too much because I don't want to confuse you. But here we have the root note, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's a minor third. 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a minor triad. 8, 9, 10. So the 10 semitone is called the minor seventh. Okay, so that's what makes this chord a minor seventh chord if we were to just play up to C. So let's count out the chord type. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you're like, okay, this must be a major chord. Well, it has a major triad. It's not necessarily a full-on major chord. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0, 4, 7, we have the major triad. 8, 9, 10. Okay, so when we add this 10, we're actually adding what's called a minor seventh. Okay, so this makes it both major and minor. And then we have 11, 12, 13, 14. Like I showed you guys before, the ninth and the fifth are all 7 notes away, so they're always going to be the same. That's not what determines a chord type. What determines a chord type is called the third of each chord. So if I were to split this up into 2 chords, you have a major triad down here, okay, 0, 4, 7, and then on top you have a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what happens when you combine a major and a minor chord? You create this hybrid chord called a dominant chord. The reason it sounds so tense is because of what's called a diminished chord, which we didn't cover here because it's a little too advanced. But a diminished chord is equidistant. So it's 0, 3, 6. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So far in this little mini course, you guys didn't learn about 0, 3, 6. So it must be something new. And it is. It's called a diminished chord. So basically combining major triad with a minor triad gives us this hybrid chord. And the reason it sounds tense is because this diminished chord. And if you really want to get meta, it sounds really tense because of what's called a tritone. And a tritone is 6 semitones away from another note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This creates the most tension, and the chord is from here to here. Because the furthest distance you can go between notes is actually 6 notes. I covered that in my Music Theory Magic course. We don't have enough time to go through that today. Okay. So how do I alter this chord? Again, we take that note that was 7 notes away called the perfect fifth. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And then we take the same tonal twin, I call it, which is 7 notes away from this note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Notice the number 7 here. We're going to either sharpen it or flatten it. For this tone, I like to hit sharp. So we're going to pull this up 1. And this is called the 2, 5, 1. Why? Because we go from the 2nd scale degree to the 5th scale degree back to the tonic or the 1st scale degree. And you guys really want to study, again, the dominant chords. They always want to come back to the tonic chords. And why? It's that magic number 7. They're 7 notes away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, there's also something called a substitution, which makes them a lot closer. But the point is, whenever you guys are stuck and you're like, I need a chord to resolve. So let me show you guys something here. I know we're going advanced, but I just want to give you guys motivation to keep pushing further and further and further into music theory. Let's say you have the chord. You're like, man, I have a really nice chord here, but I need some tension because it just sounds bland. Not the chord itself, but like leading into the chord. So a quick cheat sheet way to do this is find your perfect fifth. Again, what is the perfect fifth? The perfect fifth is 7 notes from your root note. So we're going to start here at A. I'll just draw it out so that you guys can see. So A, C, E, G, B, D. And let's say you need a chord to lead into this chord and you just don't know which chord to choose from. We're going to create a dominant chord. And we're going to take our root note and smash the like button. I need more oxygen for these explanations. Okay, so here we have a root note. Count up 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we know the chord will at least start at E. And how do we make our dominant ninth chord? We make a major triad. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we count from the perfect fifth. And now we're going to make a minor chord. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the chord code technically is 0, 4, 7, 10, 14. You don't need to memorize that. That's what the chord code chart is for. So now we have a chord that leads into the chord that we desire to move to. So let me quickly play this chord for you guys. It just adds just the right amount of tension. So now I can play those chords. I can add them in a spice. I could just play them I could play the two chords. Now that was the sharp 5, sharp 9 version that you guys heard. Sounds like we're playing something that's super exotic. All we're doing is playing a dominant chord to the tonic chord. Once you understand that, you're like, that's the key this whole time. It's the dominant chord to tonic chord, but it's taught in such an archaic way that it makes us not understand. And that's why I want to teach you guys. So let's take that perfect fifth and the ninth to get that R&B vibe. Just like that, you get the R&B sauce. That's all you really need to know to get into R&B is that dominant to tonic is such a strong sound. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys some like super high level stuff here just for free because you guys have rocked with me for what? Let's see how long this video is. 40 minutes, I think. 50 minutes. Okay, so let's see if we can do this in an hour. Probably not. Because did we go through melody? Yeah, we did. Okay, so firstly, we have the 2-5-1 of the C major scale. Now, remember I told you guys every major scale has a relative minor scale. So again, the C major scale, think of it as happy, quote unquote happy. To get to the relative minor scale, we're going to take the root note C and go down to sadness 3 notes. So it's 1, 2, 3. We're going to start here and we're going to use the same exact notes we have from the C major scale. We're just starting from A in this case. So it's the same exact notes. Now, how do I go outside of this key of C major into A natural minor? We use what's called the 2-5-1, but it's not the 2, the 5, and the 1. It's actually the dominant that wants to move to the tonic. So you don't even need the 2 really, but that's just for, I'm going to teach you guys some cool stuff. But it's all about that dominant to tonic. Like it doesn't even matter if I go out of key here. That wants to come to the tonic. Let's move to E. That wants to go to the tonic. You can even revoice it. So I went to 3 different keys just now, but because I played dominant tonic, dominant tonic, dominant tonic, it felt right, so to speak. So it's not the 2, the 5, and the 1. It's really just the 5 and the 1 that is the thing that draws you outside of your scale. But to make it in rhythm of 3 chords, we're going to use the 2, the 5, and the 1. So long story short, we're going to go to the new scale that we're going to move into. So again, this whole left part here is from the C major scale. The right side is going to be from the A natural minor scale. So we're going to take the 2 of this scale, okay? And we're going to, now this is a different chord type. It's called a, what is the technical name? I guess minor 7 flat 5, okay? I think some people call it half diminished technically, but forget the nomenclature here. So it's just, we're going to start at the 2nd scale degree of A natural minor, which is B. Skip C, go to D. Skip E, go to F. Okay, now, okay, let's continue. Skip G, go to A. Skip B, go to C. So this creates our first chord type using a chord extension to make it more like jazz sounding. So here's a rule of thumb. The more notes you add for a chord extension, usually the jazzier the chord. So when I have 5-note chords, it's going to sound super jazz-like. Okay, so that's our 2nd scale degree, and then we built the chord from here. Now, if I were to analyze this chord type, let's count it out. It's 0, 1, 2, 3. That's called a minor 3rd, 4, 5, 6. So remember 0, 3, 6 is actually a diminished chord, okay, which is not a chord type that we really covered that deeply. So this is a different beast. It's not a major. It's not a minor chord. It starts off on a diminished chord. And I'll show you guys why. Okay, so 0, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Is that count right? 0, 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. So 0, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. This should not be 13. B. Let me see here. Is it 13? B, skip to it. Boom. Boom. I guess it is 13 technically. It just sounds weird as 13. Now, if we were to take this 0, 3, 6, make it 0, 3, 7, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that would give us a minor triad. 8, 9, 10, that's a minor 7th. 11, 12, 13, 14 would be our minor version. Okay, so just giving you guys what it would normally be voiced as. Now that we have that, okay, then we're going to move to what's called the 5th of the A natural minor. So let's go to E. So we're going from the 2nd scale degree of A. Remember, we're in the A natural minor scale. 2nd scale degree, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So now we're going to go to E. And the 5th is always 7 notes up from the root note. It's a quick way to do it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That always gives you the 5th. We're going to create the chord extension from E. So you're going to start at E, skip every other note in the scale, going up the scale. So it's E, skip F, go to G. Skip A, go to B. Skip C, go to D. Skip E, go to F. Now here we get this diminished chord again. So it's the diminished chord is very tense. You usually don't use it this many times back to back because it's so tense. And lastly, we have the natural tonic here. So A, skip B, go to C, skip D, go to E, skip F, go to G, skip A, go to B, skip C, go to D. Let's dumb it down. Let's just go to B. Okay, so what I'm going to highlight here is the magic of these chord progressions. This is called the dominant chords. This is your main dominant chord, and this is your secondary dominant chord because we're going into a different key. We started in C major, and then we landed in a whole different key of A natural minor. So again, let's add our sauce to this dominant chord. Let's take what's called the 5th and the 9th. Let's pull those up one. Something happened here. Hold on, let's figure out what happened here. So 0, 1, 2, 3. I don't know how that became 3. I'm going to do 4. Okay, so see, I wasn't paying attention, and we didn't create the dominant chord for that. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a major triad, and then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is the dominant. This is why you got to understand chord codes, because me skipping the notes in the scale don't necessarily give me a dominant chord, which I should have been paying attention. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Major triad, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Gives you the dominant 9th. Okay, this is the boring way to voice it, so let's take that 5th and 9th, pull those up a half step. I'm also going to take what's called this minor 3rd and pull that up an octave. See how just rearranging the notes in a chord can make it sound completely different? And it sounds so cohesive because we're keeping the same philosophy of dominant to tonic, dominant to tonic. So again. It's all about resolving. I can even go out of key. As long as you resolve that dominant chord, you can just go anywhere. And that's how you can go outside of keys, is using that dominant chord as a way to lead to any other chord type you want. So I really encourage you guys to study dominant chords. My favorite voicing is, again, a sharp 5, sharp 9. That's just my favorite sound. It just takes me back to R&B. Is there really anything else to teach you guys? I guess melodies we didn't cover so much here. But when you understand harmony, you really understand melody. Let me show you guys one more technique. I showed you guys the 4 layers. I showed you guys how to create chords from scratch. I showed you guys how to make your chord progressions. Now I'm going to show you guys how to create melodies really simply. So here, let's use one chord type. We're going to use the minor 9th chord here. We're going to start at D. And this is why I teach chord codes, is because everything you do in music production doesn't always need a scale. Like, I shouldn't have to map out a scale, skip every other note. That's one way to do it, but you should be able to create from your head and less about a scale, because scales keep you kind of locked in. So let's create what's called a minor 9th chord. So what is a minor 9th chord? It's 0, 3, 7, 10, 14 in chord code talk. 0 is your root note. Count up your notes one by one. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Think of this like a mini scale. So melodies are like movements within your chord if it were a scale. Let me show you guys what I mean. So we're going to go tonic. Let's get the metronome. Okay, so we're going to go tonic. Let me map it out. So we're going to go tonic. Let me just play it first so you guys understand. Okay, so we can do tonic third, it's called. And now we're just sequencing the notes from our chord. We're playing one chord type. Okay, so we're going tonic. I'm going to speak kind of music theory-nese here so I can identify this for you guys. Tonic note, minor third. Then we're playing what's called the seventh or the minor seventh. Now, I didn't really get into it in this video, but in my music theory magic, I covered this. The same way the tonic, the perfect fifth, have this like harmonious relationship because they're 7 notes away. And the perfect fifth and the ninth have this harmonious relationship. I call them tonal twins because they're 7 notes away. Okay. Also, too, the third and the seventh have this tonal twin aspect because they're 7 notes away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So anytime 2 notes are 7 notes away, they tend to move in the same exact way. So what I'm saying here is we went from the tonic to the third and then up to its tonal twin called the minor seventh in that case. Now let's repeat this. So this is called a motif anytime we repeat the shape, because for the first time listeners, they want to latch on to something they can understand. And the way you get that done is by repeating something. Even my son can pick up like the rhythm. I'm like, do, 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 do. And then on the third time, he's like, do, 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 do. He starts to get it. Okay. Cause I keep repeating the same thing. So let's highlight this. Let's copy the same shape. Now here I want the note to change because it would sound boring, just going do 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 do, unless that's what you wanted. But let's switch it to the ninth here. And to add a little, polish on top, we go what's called a sharp ninth. And here we kind of go back and forth with the notes. We're just going to draw it in for reference. This is not as like copy as I do type of thing. 1, 2, 3, 3. Now the difference is we got to move these notes over. And then we're coming back down to what's called that minor seventh. And then it repeats. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here, but just change out the notes. Let's copy this over. So dun, dun, dun. Now we're going to come, instead of to the seventh, we're going to move to what's called the fifth, so that we're moving the energy of the melody. Now here's where you need a scale because we're adding in between notes. This is up to you guys' ear. There's no right or wrong way. I'm just using this as a reference. Now, I'm trying not to overly feed you guys information, but the same way I did what's called a sharp ninth up top here. Remember in our chord, we did a sharp 5, sharp 9. There's something about the ninth and the fifth where we can just raise it up a half step in the tonic. It just sounds fine if we change something. So. Something about that half step with the tonic, the perfect fifth and the ninth that we can kind of get away with. So I'm not giving you guys rules. I'm just showing you guys why this stuff works, because here is the perfect fifth and we're just sharpening it the same way we did with the ninth. And it's just adding that note above. And then we're doing the seventh. I don't need to break down every note. Hopefully you guys understand the concept is we're using this chord type and we're creating motion between the notes of the chord. We're just spreading the chord out. And now we're just coming down the scale. which I didn't map out. We're just using our ear. Now you have your first melody. Now, how do we get here? We simply broke down 5 notes of our chord and we spread them out. That's as simple as melody needs to be. If you make melody more complex, you might just be going off on the deep end. It can get more complex, but what I'm telling you guys is melody comes from chords. So it's not more melody videos you guys need, it's more chord videos, because I could freestyle a chord progression right now and it can sound melodic by the way I play it. So instead of me playing this way, that's very like straight out chord. I can play it spread out over time. It's going to sound more melodic. See how it feels more melodic simply because we're spreading out the notes. So think of melody that way as opposed to like this separate concept than harmony, because melody really derives from harmony. We really covered so much in this video, even more than I expected to cover, because you guys gave me the energy by smashing that like button. Share this with a friend or somebody who wants to get into music theory, because I feel like the way I teach music theory is a very fun way, but also too, it's not intimidating, because everybody else teaches you like to memorize staffs and pictures and sheet music, and they just go way to a high level in my opinion. This gets straight to what music actually is. What is a chord? Define a chord. You know, that's what I did, and that's why I make it so much simpler for you guys. Oh, one last thing is tuning. Okay, so before we leave this video, I want to cover one little microscopic thing here, but I want to show you guys something crazy. So even if we, okay, so I talked about this before. When you guys pick up your guitar, you don't just play it. You have to tune it first. So the same thing with plugins. Sometimes plugins are not tuned perfectly to what's called 440 hertz A. So I'm going to detune this somewhere in the middle between literally 50 cents, which is right in the middle of the next key. So this is like really detuned. We're going to copy the same exact notes. I want you guys to hear how dramatic of a difference it sounds when you simply change the tuning. And I'm saying this because some people may think they're out of key. You're not out of key. It's just the tuning. So let's go to pattern 4. And this is great for people who sample, for example, a lot of stuff in the 1970s, even like some Party Next Door stuff. It's not tuned to 440. Okay. So that's why, not all of his stuff, but I'm just saying that's why you guys may make melodies and it sounds off. So here's the first key, pattern 4. Here, I'll just do before. And then this is the detuned after. Just to give you guys an example of how dramatic this sounds. Now we did not change the notes at all. I'll even show you guys. Same notes, D at the bottom there, same notes here. Sounds like we're in a whole different key. Let's go back to the original key. So you guys got to be so careful that it's not just, you know, a music theory problem. Sometimes it's just a tuning problem. So you want to make sure you tune your instruments first to match the other music. Then you figure out your scale and all that type of stuff. So there's so much that we covered today. I'm really double checking to make sure I covered all my promises. So I showed you guys, I would show you the 4 layers, which I did, which let's do one more thing since this video is already an hour. I'm going to just play. I'm not going to like overly explain here, but we're going to play all the 4 layers that I talked about. Let's play the first layer, which is the root note here. Let's add the half step. Let's add a half step. Let's add the perfect fifth. And a fifth. Okay, so as hopefully you guys can hear, we're going kind of trappy with it. Let's hit Control Q, quantize, and let's get rid of this overlap. Now, again, this is not a tutorial per se. I'm just trying to show you these layers. So this is our contrast layer. Now, it's not supposed to be overlapped like that. I think my sustain pedal got stuck. Okay, so this is a contrast layer. We're using these bass tones to add density to our track. We can also add a counter melody in our contrast layer. It doesn't always have to be a bass. Now let's add the top line. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to play the root note D up to A. but I'm going to play a minor chord. Okay, so that's going to be D, F, A, and I'm just going to play them spread out. So it's going to sound like a melody. Okay, so that's the top line. I don't know where that recorded. I think on pattern 6. So let's copy these notes, put them on a new pattern here. I gotta really change my mouse settings here because that is not gonna work. Okay, so pattern 7, let's add this in. So that is our top line. Now we need harmony. So harmony is the in-between chords. So what chords can we use for that dark vibe? We could use, let me make sure I put this on the same piano too. Okay, so we can use suspended second. And again, you guys will get the project files for free at busyworksbeats.com/music theory. We can use that minor chord, minor triad, just in the middle octave somewhere. We could use suspended second, or we could use suspended fourth. We went over that earlier. Okay, so I used 3 chord types there. I used the minor chord, the suspended second chord, and then the suspended fourth. These long notes are just me using what's called a sustain pedal. So again, if you are getting into music for the first time, I'd recommend you guys get a MIDI controller and a sustain pedal. Very important for melodies. Okay, so this is why these notes look long. So basically it's the minor triad 0-3-7. Then we have the 0-2-7, which is a suspended second chord. And then we have 0-4-7, which is a suspended fourth chord. Did I say 0-4-7? I meant to say 0-5-7. My brain, y'all. It's been a long day. 0-5-7, which is a suspended fourth chord. I hope I wasn't saying that the whole time. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so now we need a rhythm. So what is the rhythm? We already have a rhythm in our top line. It goes do, do, do. But if we wanted more rhythm, it would be a static note or something very rhythmic. So let's just play rhythmic high note. Actually, instead of A, let's play the root note. And normally I would not play a piano because you already have a top line. I would normally do drums, but just showing you guys how this can be done with music too. Even this is kind of hard. So now we have a full composition. We have the rhythm, the contrast layer, we have the harmony section, and the top line. So that's what creates the movement for your track. It's not always the drums. So I just wanted to give you guys a final kind of, demonstration. We covered so much music theory. If you guys want to learn R&B, neo soul, hip hop, trap, Playboy Cardi stuff, yeet stuff, go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory, and I'll keep you guys up to game as far as music theory. So this is my simple way and an easy way to teach music theory. And I really hope that helped you. Share with a friend, like this video, and let them know music theory is not intimidating. It's just because they got the wrong people teaching it. Go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory for your free chord code chart. Subscribe. Peace out, guys.